I'm so tired of people saying that it's just a movie, it's just a comic book, it's just a TV show. Whatever. No, it's not. Stories are the building blocks of our culture, of ourselves, even of our own psychology. We are a product of the stories we tell ourselves about our own past and the experiences on a daily basis, but also the stories that we choose to spend time with. What types of values or feelings or whatever are they promoting? What types that we like to spend our time around? They're going to shape us. They're going to shape our personality and character, and they're going to shape our perception of the world and the acts and behaviors that we put out into the world. And people don't understand that. They go, it's just a movie. It's just this. I can like and promote whatever I want. Well, of course you can, but you should pay attention to the responsibility that you have.
Consume stories responsibly.
As a member of society, as a human being, responsibility to yourself.
Consider the consequences.
You need some balance. You need some certain criteria that is going to make sure you're promoting the right kind of works, or at least have thought through the type of work that this or that story is going to do in our culture, and then make your own decision whether or not that's something you want to support.
Consume stories responsibly. Consider the consequences. Consume stories responsibly.
Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to another office hours stream. Hope you guys have had a good week, good Thanksgiving. Hope it was a relaxed, restful time for you. Let me just make sure that I'm not, okay, yeah. Wanted to double check that I wasn't muted any longer. But I'm going to try to be as energetic as I can tonight. Sound Engraver and I were talking. We had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Really great. We went to my mother's, and my aunt and uncle came over, and it was a blast. My aunt is hilarious. I'll probably tell you some of her stories. She's such a nut. But it was a good Thanksgiving. I had Alyssa as well, and Alyssa used to seeing her cousins, which she didn't this year. So she was a little on the anxious side. Not too bad though. It's a good Thanksgiving. But then yesterday on Black Friday, we actually went to Busch Gardens, and Alyssa loves her thrill rides, and it's something we do quite often because we live close to Busch Gardens, and King's Dominion's not too far. There's even a Six Flags not crazy too far from us, but she loves her roller coasters. She loves her thrill rides. And it was Christmas Town and all of that, and it was really great. But it was a huge line, and usually we try to go on days whenever we go to a theme park. We go on days that it's not too crowded, because Alyssa doesn't do great in lines. She doesn't always understand that. Oh no, we have to wait here for our turn for this. And she can get antsy and a lot of anxiety and stuff. And then so we were there for quite a while, and I got some fast queue passes and stuff like that, to help out here and there. But I was telling Sound Engraver, we walked. I had my little odometer on my watch, and we walked about a little over 3 miles, and I walk about 3 miles every day. So I was like, why does that exhaust me so much? And then I realized, because the whole time I'm walking, I'm like hurting her, because she'll go up and touch people or get away from me, if I'm not really being vigilant. And then when we're standing in line, it's not just standing there. She just leans on you, or falls against you. So I'm holding her up, or, keeping her. And really, it was quite it was a wonderful day. We had a great time there, but it was exhausting. So all that to preface, I set up the stream tonight, and everything was fine. And Sound Engraver and I got back from mass, because we do evening mass on Saturdays. And she had plans. She was going to do some work, and I was going to, do some things and get things ready. And I just I walked in the room where she was, and it's like, we were both so exhausted. And we just like, you better set the alarm, because I might pass out and not be on stream on time. So feeling a little better now. Going to try to be as alert as I can. I don't really have a lot of stuff to talk about, but I do want to make a couple announcements, and I'm sure the chat will have plenty of things to chat about and whatnot. But yeah, glad it seems like you guys had a good Thanksgiving. Do want to welcome you guys. Ghost Planet Max Inc. 1.0 here at first, and as usual, great to see you there. Private Eye in Retrospectiva, welcome. Eldritch Fan, good to see you. Darth Enigma, Schooner Tuna, Andre Hernandez says, hello, Prof. Have you heard the Dave Filoni got promoted? What do you have to say to the people that still believe there is a civil war? Oh, man. I will finish welcoming people, but this is a funny thing. I didn't hear about it because I don't follow the news. Sound Engraver told me about it because she tends to watch a lot of certain YouTube channels and keeps abreast on the news and whatnot. I think it's hilarious. Apparently, like he's from I don't have all the details, but I guess he's like almost equal with Kathleen Kennedy or something like that, or some. He's got a lot more input now, right? And there are still people so deluded is like, see guys, this is good. Now he's gonna change things, and they're still the people that was like, no, he has to say that he has to play the game, and now he's in power. Nothing's gonna change. Nothing's gonna change. He's already shown you that he can't write worth a snot. He's shown you that he doesn't really want to change anything. All he wants to do is tell his own ideas. He doesn't even want to tell Star Wars. He just wants to pull his own crap out of his head and tell those stories. It's nonsense. Um, but it needs to happen. It needs to happen. He needs to get full control. Make him the only person in charge and watch how he still continues to run it into the ground. And then maybe someday people will wake up. But I think people have tied their identities to this notion that Dave Filoni's the chosen one, and it's almost like they just, even when the writing is on the wall a little bit more clearly and more clearly and more clearly, they have to invent ways. I mean, I'm sorry, but when he came out and literally said, and there's video recordings of him giving talks talking about the feminist way and all this kind of nonsense, and when people turned around and said, he had to say that, though. He has to say that because he's playing the game and he's got to try and get in good. I mean, that's absurd. That's childlike. That's schoolyard reasoning. And people actually tried to defend it with that. It was, you're just not going to convince some people. You can show them that the sky is clearly blue and they'll say, oh, it's actually green though, So, welcome, Alec Purdue, Daniel Heron. Good to see you there. Good. I guess doing research for a show, but I guess I can take a break. Daniel Heron, I was wearing the leather jacket that you gave me a while ago, some years ago. You sent me a couple of jackets in that leather one that you didn't have, that you didn't want anymore, didn't need anymore. And I was wearing it to mass tonight, and Sound Engraver was like, "You look good in that jacket." I was like, "Thank the bird, man." Yeah, Alec Purdue, it's good to have you on time and everything for one of these. Divinital Kayan, welcome, and a happy belated birthday to you. It was your birthday not too long ago. Leia Plus Size, great to see you. And of course, my dear sweet Sound Engraver. Yep, hope the weekends are going well for everybody. So many more, but welcome to everybody here. Eldridge Fan says, if you're thinking of Dark Empire, then I suggest Prism's rewrite of the sequels are another highly visual piece of media that takes on at least one similar theme. I know Eldritch Fan's really pushing me to get into this Prism thing. I'm not opposed to it. I just not interested in the premise, right? Apparently, just for what you told me, Prism takes the Disney sequels and like rewrites it, like fixes it, like makes it good or something like that. I don't want it. I don't want anybody to fix the Disney sequels. I don't want anything to do with that structure. Like, I don't even want a Rey that's interesting. I didn't know. I've got the EU. For all its warts, here and there. That's not to say I'm never going to look at it. I'll look at it at some point when I have time for curiosity's sake. And I know you'll keep reminding me, and eventually I'll get around to it. So, but just explaining it for people who didn't know what you were talking about there. Johnny Ortiz said, spent my Saturday off Twitter, then went back, heard about Tommy and Power Rangers and Doctor Who, and now I want to unlive myself, figurative, unlive myself. I didn't hear about. I'm not a Power Rangers guy, and I don't follow that stuff. Did Tommy from the Power Rangers pass away, or something happen or something? I didn't hear about that. Eldridge Fan said, father made homemade sweet potato pie, homemade apple pie. Dang, a lot of good pies. That sounds good. Yeah, my mother cooks amazing meals, and she makes this really amazing crock pot mac and cheese, which I could just eat until I literally died. Like if you ever saw the movie Seven, it's horrible. This is horrible. But the guy who was like killed by gluttony, like I could do that without any prompting with that mac and cheese. It's so good. 14 Bis, welcome. I don't think that name sounds a little familiar. Maybe I've seen you around once or twice. Sound Engraver says, correction, I don't watch the YouTube Geek News anymore. I read articles, and even that is getting less and less. Yeah. Darth Enigma says, "Abandon all hope, ye all who believe in Darth and Dave Filoni." You really should. I mean, I just don't understand this. I mean, I understand the need or the desire to want to have hope, right? But it slowly becomes evident that people are just wanting hope for the sake of hope and not really because they love Star Wars. I mean, if you're willing to accept this utterly crapped upon version of Star Wars, Sound Engraver and I were talking about this, too, just not even in Star Wars, but like Marvel or whatever. People are like, yeah, but do you think they can turn it around with the next movie? Why would you want them to? And we were talking about like in the context of Thor, for example. And I was saying, I can't understand people are like, maybe they'll get Thor right in the next movie, though, guys. Like, how could you even remotely watch a movie with the character of Thor who's gone through all that crap deconstruction and disrespect? Because continuity wise, that's still the same character. I don't care what they do with him in the new movie. It's just like, no. Because we were talking about Marvel trying to scramble. Pardon me. Need a little Diet Pepsi. Trying to scramble, apparently to get audiences back or whatever. But like, why? Why would you even be remotely be excited about that? Alec Purdue, thank you very much for the $2 super chat. Said should do a comparison between him and Ken Penders. I don't know Kim Penders. And who are you talking about a comparison between? The Prism people and Kim Penders? I don't know. Yeah, don't know about that. Yeah, you have to explain it. I'll see it in the chat there when you do. Yeah. So let me chat a little bit. Welcome, Chuck Jones. More people here. Leah Plus Size says again, what is the difference between Wish and the Marvels and the Barbie movie? None whatsoever. But it was culturally acceptable just to give the Barbie movie a pass. I don't know if people had a Fanman thinks that maybe people just got this like weird crush on Margot Robbie and they can't not say. But I think it has to do with too the fact that Barbie isn't a franchise that your average geek boys care about, right? We don't care about Barbie. So they're willing to give a pass on the same ridiculous woke treatment or try to spin it some way where it was actually Ken's movie, guys. It was based, but it didn't even mean to be based, and we got to support that. No, you don't. You're ridiculous. Anyway. Thank you, Xerinx. Maybe somebody else clarified this as well, but Xerinx tagged me in the chat so I can see that Jason David Frank, aka Tommy the Green White Red Ranger, deleted himself after his last divorce. Deleted himself. Do you mean he committed icide? I try not to say words that would try. That's horrible. That is terrible news. If that's what you mean by that, you're probably trying to again say it in a comment that doesn't get automatically filtered by YouTube or something. But that's horrible. That's really sad news. Huh. Yeah, Sound Engraver says, come on, guys. Maybe they'll get it right this time. Maybe they'll have learned after WandaVision, after Kenobi, after the Marvels, whatever. I 100% agree with the statement. Jackhammer City says, Disney could make a great Star Wars movie, and it won't matter to me as it still leads back to that terrible sequel trilogy. That's what I tried to tell people. When they're still talking about the Mandalorian and all Dave Filoni, they're going to really, bring in a lot of good stuff, guys. And they have been abundantly clear that everything they're doing, both Favreau and Filoni have flat out said this, like in direct words, we're filling in the gap between original trilogy and Disney sequel trilogy. Favreau said we're leading right up to the New Order. I mean, so why would you care about any of that? I just don't understand that. I really don't. So anyway, yeah, that was right. That's really sad about the David Franks, I think his name was. Again, I never really was a Power Rangers guy, but so I'm not familiar with the actor and a lot of things, but I do. My heart goes out to his family, of course, and those of you who are fans, I can tell that's a big deal when someone you loved like that, their work and everything. That's a horrible news. I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, Samuel Proctor would see Filoni is finally beginning to be seen for his true colors. More and more people are waking up about Dave Filoni, but you still got those hangers on who are like, no, he's saving us. I mean, it's kind of like what's a good analogy here? It's kind of like being on a boat that you dearly love. You dearly love this boat. Let's say it's or let's I don't know. I was gonna say make it a theme park or something. Let's say there's a theme park that you love attending. You dearly love this theme park, and it comes under new management, and they start just to not run things very well. And it's not the same. The magic is gone. Okay, well, you could still get it back from that, right? New management could come in at that point and still maybe kind of bring it back. But then let's say that new management starts to ship out some of the rides, starts to deconstruct some of the landscapes. They can go so far where it gets to the point where there's really just no getting it back. There's no getting it back to where it was unless somebody came in and like took 10 years to completely renovate everything and cut ties with everything that had gone on previously and really truly start from scratch. You just can't get it back. And that's what Star Wars, that's what Marvel is, that's what all these franchises are. I mean, it's like you can't get it back. There's no going back after the garbage deconstruction that they've put into these characters. This was the argument I had so many times with people who still wanted the Snyderverse to be fixed or whatever. It's like, you can't fix it. Stop it. It's no going, it's no fixing that. So anyway, I don't really have any kind of good segue for this for this, but oh yeah, it is Chuck Jones channel. It is late, or it was the other day, International Men's Day. Yeah, I missed it this year. It's always so busy around the holidays here, but I know that there's always a speaking of poor the poor White Rangers, fate and whatnot. There's a big push around International Men's Day to prevent male suicide and stuff, because men are so much more likely statistically to commit such a thing over the women and whatnot because of various different things and stuff. So yeah, I missed that. Let me talk about this before I forget it, or before I just realize that there's no good segue, so I should probably do it. Because I did want to kind of announce this on this stream. For the new year, I want to announce it now, just so people know about it. Plus, by announcing it, I can, have some good due dates and stuff, set time-wise and whatnot. I'm going to start doing two. I just saw this $10 super chat from Alec Purdue, and I better go ahead and take it because what I'm about to go in and explain is going to take me a few minutes, take me a little while, and I don't want to forget the super chat or lose it there or anything. So let me go ahead and get this super chat. Thank you very much, by the way, Alec Purdue, and thanks for okay. So you're explaining that what I had some confusion with a second ago. Dave Filoni and Kim Penders. Okay, both ruined a franchise by inserting female characters that they have to force into everything. Ken, it's Julie Sue and Sonic comics. Oh, okay. Dave is Ahsoka in Star Wars. Yeah, I've never heard Kim Penders, and that makes sense because I've never really read the Sonic comics. Yeah. You've seen it before. I mean, that's what they're doing now, trying to ruin, push their woke characters into everything. But yeah, Snap says Geek has no knowledge on Sonic. I do love that. I was a Sega Genesis guy growing up, so I loved the Sonic video games, and I watched some of the cartoons here and there. But I've heard that the Sonic comics are amazing. Alec Purdue was the first to turn me onto that. Matt Mitchell, his channel, he was telling me how they were great when he was on my channel. So I will be reading them at some point because enough people have said that they're quite good. And yeah, I'm not like anti-Sonic or anything. Love the first Sonic film. I haven't seen the second one yet. I do need to watch that. But okay, so coming up in the new year, on my channel, I'm going to be starting 2 podcasts. Now, these are going to be for members of the channel only. There will be some edited free versions that I'll release. It's going to be 1 episode a month for each podcast. And they're going to be educational podcasts. They're really going to see, basically the idea is, I talked a lot before, or not a lot, but I talked before, I mentioned about, maybe one day liking to do sort of an online course. A lot of people were asking me, do you do your teaching your archetypes or your writing heroes thing as an online course? And I said, I'd love to get into that. And I was looking at it, and I was looking at the structure of it, and how to plan it. And I thought, a step toward it might be to start with an educational podcast, which, is kind of like its own little class, in a lot of ways. So I'm turning 2 of the courses that I teach, 2 of the courses that are, I'm big in my scholarship with, into these educational podcasts. And I'll be doing them different seasons, so it'll be 12 episodes per season. And though it'll be over a year. So starting in January, I'll drop one episode per month. And the two podcasts are going to be, one is the heroic archetypes, and we'll look at some different angles of that. First, we'll cover a lot more in depth than just my little YouTube videos have been, and we'll also cover angles on how to create them, how to write them, and there'll be some ways you can do that, and I'll release the membership, tiers and whatnot. Probably for the podcasts themselves, it'd be no more than just like the $5 tier, just to get full access to the full educational podcasts. I'll probably put up one podcast episode per month. So like episode 1 of both of these podcasts will go up in January. When February comes around, though, I'm going to take down episode 1 and put up episode 2. So it won't be like, well, I'll just wait until November, get 1 month's worth of membership, and then just, have them all or download them all or something like that. You really can't do that. But I will be releasing free edited versions of them on the YouTube channel for those who just can't do the memberships or whatever. And one day, once I've finished these seasons, once the seasons are through, I might release them on Audible, and let people purchase them there, for the whole thing. But the idea came about partly from wanting to eventually work towards an online class, but also because I think I mentioned at some point before, before Halloween, I was looking for, some things about interesting scholarship that I wanted. And I found a really cool podcast, or it looked like a cool podcast on Dracula, some scholarship on Dracula, different incarnations of it. But it ended up being these two women who were academic feminist theorists. And it was just awful. They were just like every woman professor I ever had when I was getting my master's in English. And they just, nothing, we must serve the agenda. Oh, it was ridiculous. I remember they even said they were talking about some of what I think are really cool psychoanalytic takes on Dracula, and they thought, it's just so limiting and it's so boring. All of these, so we thought it'd be so much more interesting to look at the implications for how it does with women's roles and blah blah blah. I'm like, how is that more interesting? Talk about limited. Feminist theory is the most limited of any scope you can look at, because the only thing you can do is, how does the story treat women? How does the story treat women? And that's all feminist theory is. And they can talk a big game about, no, it's moving beyond that. No, it's not. If you move beyond that, you're not doing feminist theory anymore. So feminist theories, drives me crazy even listening to them talk. It's kind of like PTSD. I had to put up with a lot of their garbage when I was going through and getting my degrees. So one of the podcasts will be Heroic Archetypes. The second podcast is going to develop from my story that I taught, or from my classes that I taught on the American Ghost Story. Now, I don't think I'm going to limit the podcast to just American versions, though I might skew towards that because that's where my scholarship and interests lie. But in American Ghost Stories, when I taught that class in universities, like I'd said, I'd probably start this year out with the Sleepy Hollow legend, and it's really going in depth. I like to take a story. This is something that fascinates me. I like to take a story or a novel or something like that that's of the supernatural bent, not maybe a ghost, literally, maybe not, but like vampire or whatever, something like that, that is just so saturated our culture. Like a story, I find that fascinating. I think it's so cool when someone's written a story that's just become such a linchpin of culture, like Sleepy Hollow. Even if you've never read it, facts of it, facets of it. Dracula, Jekyll and Hyde, these kinds of things. I just find those things fascinating. So really trying to delve into the original stories themselves, but also the important incarnations of them. So when I teach American Ghost Story, for example, when I do the Sleepy Hollow thing, we'll go through and talk about the original story. We'll even trace it back to Robbie Burns and the Tam O'Shanter poem that Irving kind of took some influence from. But we'll look at the different incarnations. We'll talk about the Tim Burton movie and really break that down. We'll talk about, the series that just finished up, the Fox series, but there's a lot of different incarnations of it and stuff. So, so I think that'll be fun too. And that'll be, available as well in there. So 2 podcasts, 1 episode a month, starting in the new year. And I'll give you more details as I nail down more of the specifics in terms of tiers and organizations and everything, but it won't be more than like $5 a month for anybody who wants to join the channel and get access to those podcasts. And like I said, the Archetype podcast will be, geared towards, or there'll be a track where you can take to gear towards people who are trying to write these characters and write these archetypes as well. So that's coming in the new year. and just giving you a heads up about it. I'll give you more details as we go along further. But I do see a super chat from Studio Super. Thank you very much. Good to see you, Studio Super. Haven't seen you around, I think, in last stream or something like that. Said, I remember when Chris Evans said his critics of Lightyear would die off like dinosaurs, only for his film to be beaten by a dinosaur film. Tragic irony or poetic justice. Folks love dinosaurs. I'm glad you brought that up. That is really funny. But it reminded me, too, of just the really bad takes that a lot of these woke celebrities are going. They're so they truly believe that they're on the right side of history or something, and they're just not. I remember, I loved the series Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Agent Coulson is one of my favorite fictional characters. What a great character. And I remember Clark Gregg, the actor. I'm under no illusions that any of these actors are, more aligned with my politics. I know they're liberals and whatever, that's fine. But I remember when he was in the first Captain Marvel movie, because it took place in the 90s, so it was like young Agent Coulson for like a couple of bit parts there or whatever. And I remember he was talking about the reaction against Captain Marvel, and he gave the same, just pardon my French, but straight up dumbass take that a lot of these woke people try to give whenever there's clapback or whenever there's resistance to one of their crap movies, not because it's got a woman in it, but because it's a crap movie. It's not a well-written story. It's just so absurd to think that, it's fanboys they have a problem against strong women. Are you kidding me? There's plenty. We love strong women characters. Write them well. Stop trying to preach an ideology through them and just write them well. So it's really absurd. But I know Clark Gregg was like, it must be sad just being one of the dinosaurs wandering toward the tar pits like that. I'm like, oh, really? How did that tar pits saying work out for you? Does anybody give a crap about Miss Marvel or Captain Marvel anymore? Nope. New movie proves that. So who's the dinosaur wandering towards the tar pit now, Clark Gregg? It really ticked me off hearing him say that. And it ticks me off too. Hey, the Marvels came out, and Stephen King comes out first, goes, Stephen King, got to preach my old time hippie liberal platforms all the time, and I think it's horrible that people are happy about this movie failing. Why not? I'm thrilled that this movie's failing. I want to celebrate it, not because I want the people involved in this movie to suffer. No, but because Hollywood needs a flippin' wake-up call. They need that cold hard slap in the face and let one of their movies just utterly die like this, and it took something like the Marvels to where the actual normies and geeks were going to say no to, because geeks don't say no to anything. It's very rare that they actually keep their butts home, and it's infuriating that they don't. But for whatever reason, all the stars aligned, and a lot of geeks stayed home from this one, as well as normies. So that was great news. But yeah, a lot of people, Samuel L. Jackson's even one of them trying to say, some people just don't like strong female. Are you kidding me? What a ridiculous straw man. How can you even keep a straight face when you say that? You should be ashamed of yourself for even remotely parroting that dumb defense. Like, I don't even know anybody who truly just doesn't like female characters. I have no, like, but see, this is the boogeyman that feminist theory and feminism, tries to put out there. If they know that they can't argue their side all that logically. So they have to create a boogeyman and put that in the public consciousness as, look, maybe you don't want to listen to everything we say, but you don't want to be that person who's against us, right? That's those basement dwelling, incelled, whatever. So they just put this boogeyman idea out there, which I don't even think hardly exists. And then it's just accepted that anybody who doesn't like, Ghostbusters 2016 is one of those, woman haters. Anybody who doesn't like Captain Marvel, oh, it's a woman hater. It's so absurd. It's so childish. You'd think they could see through this, but no. Ghost Planet said Stephen King has lost his mind. I think all the coke and drugs, pot, alcohol has damaged his brain even once he got sober. It's a sad story, Stephen King, because he's written some wonderful things that I'll always be grateful for him to him for. But man, it's just another example of one of those. Look, you're a writer. You're not a social commentator in terms of, your writing can be social commentary, in just terms of a natural, organic way. But shut up. I don't want to hear what you think the world should do politically and so forth. You're a novelist. You're a writer. Shut up and be a writer. That's why I just one of my personal heroes is Alice Cooper. And people have tried to get his, take on politics or whatever. And he's like, I'm here to entertain. No, I'm an entertainer. Why would you even want to hear what I have to say about that? And I just respect that so much. I always respect it when I hear a celebrity say that. I think I've heard, like, I'm not really a Dolly Parton fan, but I've heard her say something like that too, which I respected. And speaking of Alice Cooper, what a great storyteller too. That's in terms of writers. He should be lumped in there to it. Apparently, Alec produced said Carl Benjamin said it best in his reply to Steven. We're gloating because the people made the movie hate us. Yeah, that's a great way. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Divinital Kayan said, I mostly prefer male characters, but I don't mind a good female character. I mostly like, and this is from Divinital Kayan. You might not know it from her name, but this is coming from a female. I most likely like the male characters because I've encountered too many female characters who are unlikable. Yeah, you get kind of gun shy, especially when they bill it like that. This is a story about a strong, independent woman. Pass. If you have to tell me that the woman is strong and independent, then I'm not interested. If it's just about a woman character who happens to be strong and independent, great, sure. But we're so done with the watchwords and all of the silly, gobbledygook that goes with it. Eldritch fan said, shrug. I've come to despise it whenever a woman's on screen in the modern mainstream movie because I know why she's there and everything she'll say, and I know she can never fail or have flaws. Exactly. It's like, it's not about a fact that a woman's a hero. It's a fact that the writing is crap, but no one can accept that. Oh, no. And they really don't know how to write anymore. They really don't. A lot of great writers who've given us wonderful stories in the past, when it came out, and I think it started with like the Me Too movement, in the 2000 teens. And then certainly when it just became like, there just became this like, it was just like the wake up call to all the woke sleeper agents in media, and everybody there's this swelling of it in our entertainment culture. And they just really got too big for their britches, and they thought they were unstoppable. They had all the power. People were always going to make them successful. And for a while, people did, like normie wise, because they didn't really know what was going on. But it's gotten to the point now where the normies themselves, even if they can't explain it, they're just tired of the crap. And it's very wonderful to see. It's poetic justice to see all of these people who've just been hating on us and trying to rip you down and insult you every which way if you dare disagree with them or criticize some of their garbage, entertainment. It's wonderful to see them fail. It's wonderful to see their works go down in flames. It's very wonderful. It's good for culture to have that happen. Definitely. Samuel Proctor says, where will you release the podcast? On the channel? On places like Spotify? Good question. Yeah, I'm a little scattered tonight, so maybe I didn't explain it all that well. I'll do like a proper ad for it, over the next few weeks, obviously. But no, I'm starting out with it just here on YouTube. So you'll have to be a channel member to get the full unedited version. Now, I probably will, like I said, I am going to do some edited down versions of it and release it for free on YouTube. Edited down ones, which won't have a lot of the meat. But I might put those on Spotify or iTunes and stuff as well. We'll see. But to get the real meaty versions of it, that'll be reserved for channel members at first. And eventually, like I said, once I finish out a whole season once I finish out a whole year for each one, then I'll move on and maybe put that whole season out on like Audible or something like that, a place where people can get the whole thing. But yeah, first season of I'm still coming up with a name. The one on the ghost stories, it's based on my course, which was called American Ghost Stories, but I don't think that's a very accurate name for the podcast because it's not just ghosts and it's not technically just American versions of it, So I don't know, I'm still coming up with a name for that one. But the first season, the first year would delve into Sleepy Hollow. Maybe move on to Dracula in the next season. I don't know, something like that. But the first season of Heroic Archetypes will be kind of like Heroic Archetypes 1. Like if I was teaching it as a class, this would be like Heroic Archetypes 101. Then there'd be Heroic Archetypes 102, which would go a little bit more focused and a little bit more, expansive and so forth, So that's how that'll work. But thanks for asking, Samuel Proctor. Appreciate that. Studio Super for $4.99. Thank you so much. Said these folks are so far left, they've never done the right thing in their lives. So they can't be on the right side of history. That's too far right. It's because woke is a religion. Woke is truly is a religion. And You can be a religious ideologue even on the right, but I don't see that same kind of self-righteousness anywhere today on the right that I see on the left. You know, on the left, it's very much you are either for us or against us, and if you're not for us, then you're an evil, boogeyman. Um, I mean, look at how they've done it. I mean, I remember when, and I'm just talking about the rise of the ideology here. Okay, I'm not necessarily talking politics. Maybe you liked Barack Obama's politics. That's fine if you did. But I remember I was very much against Barack Obama. Didn't like anything he had, he stood for or said or whatever. And during especially the first part of his presidency, the left tried to treat you as though if you at all resisted Barack Obama, you were a fringe lunatic right wing extremist. I'm sorry, what? What? We can't even not like the candidate, They did the same thing with Trump, right? I mean, I'm not going to stand up and defend every part of Trump's character, but I think he was a darn good president, and I'd have him again in a heartbeat. You're a right wing extremist fringe, right? No, actually, no. But it's that kind of visceral reaction that you only see from a very an ideology that's so religious. And that's not to say that any religion is an ideology, because it's not. It's not the same thing. But the woke has become such a religion. It's become such an ideologue. It's programmed. You're programmed into it. These are the things. This is the party line that thou must toe, and these are the things that thou must think and thou must never question. And it's just it's freaky. It's like talking to some zombies. And I work in the academic world, so I see it as purest and most extreme. It's horrible. Like Purdue said, you'd be surprised. We have the term rightoid for a reason. I never heard that term. Leia Plus says, I think I look forward to the Dracula talk. One of my favorite horror characters. Yeah, that's really fun. I'm looking forward to that too, because I've been doing a lot of and see, like, so for an example of how I would do it, it wouldn't just be like, it would start with the Dracula novel, obviously, but we do some precursors to Dracula too, and we'd really be trying to kind of look at the mythos of the vampire and why it's so important to society, why we've latched onto it even before Dracula, especially since the novel Dracula, but why we've latched onto this type, and what it does for us culturally, mythologically speaking, what it does for us to have a monster like this. And it wouldn't be just like, oh, everything that's called a vampire we're going to look at, because that's not fun. I'm not looking at Twilight, that's for sure. But that, really focusing on the impact of certain stories and certain tales and myths, in terms of literary myths. I don't mean just folklore in general. It's not like going to be a one of those History Channel documentaries that goes to every little folklore and legend or something like that. No, I'm talking about stuff that we can root to literary works, stories or novels that really have an impact on society. I'm just so interested in the Sleepy Hollow story, because people don't realize how ingrained that story is. People really don't. I mean, everybody knows the Headless Horseman, that he's a timeless monster. We don't have as many stories of him as, say, Dracula, but he's a timeless monster, and he's such a quintessentially American monster, because he represents everything that we as specifically Americans fear, or would try to warn against. I mean, the legend of him is that he's a Hessian soldier, from the Revolutionary War, and the Hessians were mercenaries brought in by the British who didn't really abide by even European gentlemanly warfare. I mean, they were brutal, and all kinds of stories abound of them raping and pillaging and being quite brutal on the field. So they were like scare tactics. They were mercenaries. So he starts with that. Then he loses his head. There actually is a real story of a Hessian that was beheaded. I'll go into that in the course, but he loses his head. And what does that represent? Somebody who's lost their head, metaphorically. And America was founded on in the Enlightenment era, age of reason and so forth and everything. So to lose one's head and be so viciously consumed with brutality like that, I mean, that's at the heart of what American ethos is against, So it's a fascinating monster, all the other aspects to it are fascinating too. Fascinating, the Ichabod Crane's character, the Katrina Van Tassel, all of them. So it's a more deeply rooted story than I think your average just sort of normie realizes. Normie in terms of early American literature or something. So really, really am excited about delving into it. um, Studio Super says, with the left, it sounds like you're describing a Sith. If you're not with me, then you're again my enemy. My response, I will do what I must. It's funny that you mentioned that, because I remember when episode 3 of Star Wars came out, George W. Bush was in the was the president. And everybody, there was that line when Anakin says, if you're not for me or against me or whatever, and all of the woke media that time or whatever were saying, see, it's a slant against George Bush, because apparently he had said something like that, war on terror, all that kind of stuff. I forgot what his words were, what even the context was, but that was the thing. It was like, ha, Star Wars is sticking it to George Bush. Well, then, fast forward some years later, and Barack Obama says something pretty much similar, the same thing. If you're not for us, you're against us, about something. Again, I'm not remembering context, right? And then all of a sudden, everybody's like, yeah, see, that makes sense. So there's no rhyme or reason. A woke ideologue isn't going to stand on logic. They're not going to be consistent. They're going to try to manipulate with emotion and with anger, and try to manipulate people into not resisting them. That's how that works. Leia Plus Size says, if I may ask, would it be like a Dracula versus Lestat kind of discussion, since they are both two different takes on the vampire? It wouldn't be a literal discussion on Dracula versus Lestat, but we would follow the vampire archetype, primarily through Dracula, but we would definitely talk Interview with the Vampire, and like what Anne Rice brought to the vampire mythos that was such a cultural phenomenon, and we might even mention cursorily like a Twilight thing, but not in any kind of applauding way. But yeah, we would track it, and track it through, and to what vampires are today, and what still remains, and what is still such a hold on us from the original mythology and stuff like that. So yeah, we would talk about all of those. Yeah. Yeah, true. Mark Baker said, yeah, it's kind of like saying if you don't like Snoop Dogg, you're a racist. Yeah. What? No one would say that. But if you don't like the Marvels, you're sexist. Thank you, Sound Engraver. Yeah, so interesting. The monster and the myth of the headless horseman, or Hessian. Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating to delve into that. I geek out about that hardcore. Oh yeah, people asking about Castlevania, Vampire Hunter D. I mean, I haven't really gone through and fleshed out the vampire season, because that's for next year. Sleepy Hollow would be first, but yeah, all that kind of stuff. Anything that's really taken a hold into culture. I'm not going to go look for everything. That's the thing when I do these things. Like you can't just look at everything that has to do with a vampire, or everything that has to do with Sleepy Hollow or a Headless Horseman or whatever. I look through all the iterations, and I find the ones that have kind of taken hold. Like I found, when I researched Sleepy Hollow for years now, I've been researching that, and you see a lot of little stories or things that were published. Like actually, I told Sound Engraver, there's a book series I finally started. I gave it a chance, and I'm actually pretty impressed so far. I'm just in the first book, but you can't really count everything that's ever been written, especially in today's self-publishing era, because a lot of stuff is just people kind of writing fan fiction about this or that, or people in a very niche fandom that doesn't necessarily affect greater culture in general, but like I probably wouldn't need to mention Hellsing, which is a really cool anime, but it's not culturally affecting, necessarily. But yeah, there's this series of books. I think they're like young adult books, and it's by an author named Richard Gleaves. And it looked sort of self-published or something. I was looking for something else to listen on Audible while I was reading my other things in the hard copy, and it's about like Jason Crane, the descendant of Ichabod Crane. And I was like, well, cool premise, but I'm kind of gun shy on self-published authors. Not because I have anything against self-publishing. I think it's a great way to do it. But a lot of people, let's just face it, who self-publish do so they can bypass any kind of quality control. So I'm like, I don't want to spend money on this. But eventually, for whatever reason, I tried it out. And I'm so impressed with it so far. The Audible production's pretty good too. So yeah, but you can't just drop everything that has to do with the thing, So anyway, Studio Super, thank you very much. 4.99 says, feminist theory in a nutshell: a group of folks who aren't married yet found a way to nag all the folks as if they are. Oh man, I remember when I was sitting, I was getting ready to go into my English MA program, English master's program, and they had all of us who were, brought into the program. It was a small program. We were seated around a table and talking to all of the English master's professors, in the department there, and they were going around saying, introducing themselves, and I was like, you know what? Nobody in here needed to be told that the woman on the end in her Birkenstocks, tank top, and unshaved pits, none of us needed to be told that that's the feminist studies professor. We all, like you just, boom, she's a type. And of course she was, I mean, none of us needed, you don't even have to wear a name tag, lady. We got your number down. Alec produced it. I'll send you something later on Vampire Hunter D. It actually has quite a bit of cultural relevance to its creation. Samuel Proctor says, have you thought about releasing the podcast for your patrons? Yeah, no, I thought about what's the best way to do it, through Patreon and I thought YouTube's membership is just easier. I could easily do it over on Patreon instead, but I think since I'm just focused on YouTube, people would be more likely to just do the YouTube membership than they would going over on the Patreon. I don't mind doing it on the Patreon platform, but if for some reason people were really averse, yeah, no, see, you'd have to be I think it's just going to be easier to do it through the YouTube membership. Patreon is a way to possibly do it in the future if more people wanted that. But for right now, anyway, the YouTube membership is going to be easier because I can just set those videos to be visible to the YouTube members, channel members. But good question. Bebop Bandicoot, good to see you there. Says, look up the Nelepsy from Slovakian myth is the super ghoulish vampire of nightmares. Oh yeah, there's a lot of Eastern European precursors to Dracula, and you can even there's even Japanese variants, like, I love Demon Slayer, and they call them demons, but they're basically vampires, so there are a lot of variants and stuff like out there. I guess I'm mostly interested in Western culture, though. I mean, I'm interested in some of the other, variants and stuff like that. They're so fascinating, but my scholarship has always been focused on Western culture, if not strictly American, then at least like, Western European beginnings and stuff like that. But yeah, that is fascinating. It's interesting. Yeah, that's what I figured, Alec Purdue. I just I'm definitely not going to do Patreon and YouTube. I'm doing YouTube only, and if YouTube turned out to be a problem doing their channel membership and people just preferred something else, then I might do it. But yeah, no, I'm just going to stick to YouTube right now. Andre Hernandez, his favorite Sleepy Hollow adaptation. That's hard. See, that's hard to answer because if you mean like, most loyal to the original story, I mean, it'd have to be one of the made-for-TV ones, like maybe the Jeff Goldblum or something like that one, or the Tall Tales and Legends with Ed Begley Jr. or something. But even those made changes. The thing about Sleepy Hollow is it's not really. It'd be silly to try to make an on-screen adaptation that was faithful to the original story, because the original story is not something that should ever be made into a movie. It's a satire. It's got a lot more to it than that. It's loaded, but it's something that cries out for readaptations, So it's kind of the thing that I don't mind, as long as you're true to the spirit of the characters. I don't really mind. So that's why I love like Tim Burton's movie, which is nothing like the story, but it takes that shell of it. I thought the idea behind the Sleepy Hollow series was interesting. It was horribly executed, in the long run, but the idea behind it was wonderful. Yeah, there's a lot of different. It's kind of hard to just pick one, for that sake there. Leia Plus says Kevin Feige is getting frustrated that the Captain Falcon movie is not as good as Wonder Soldier. He says, why are the fight scenes as good as Winter Soldier? Why aren't the fight scenes as good as Winter Soldier? That's funny. Yeah, I hope that movie just gets they'll never pull the plug on that movie, because like I said, that's the woke's baby. That's, yeah, we forced a minority character into the role of Captain America. Take that, patriarchy, white heteronormative patriarchy. So they'll never just give up on that movie. It'd be wonderful to see them just pull the plug on it, like Warner Brothers did on the Batgirl movie or something. But I hope it comes out, and I hope it just bombs. I hope it's like another Marvels, Yeah, because good enough for them. Good enough for them. Darth Enigma says, I have no idea why only just now thought of this, but I just checked and my local library has Bram Stoker Dracula. Oh, any library is going to have Bram Stoker Dracula. That's one of the staple canon works of literature. Yeah, um, that's why I'm so interested in those kind of tales, Jekyll and Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. That's another one. Um, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, of course, these are staple, important works of literature. Um, that just sink into culture, even if you've never read them. You know things about them, even if you don't know that the things you know are actually about them. Bebop Bandicoot says none of the vampire weaknesses can kill them, while sunlight can't kill them. They are supernaturally compelled to go back into their graves at dawn. Oh, the Nelapsi, if I'm pronouncing that right, is a force of nature. Yeah. There were a lot of different takes on it. I mean, there were a lot of different, vampires started out is kind of a catch-all for all of it's kind of interesting to see how a lot of the different monster types we know of today were originally just this one type that was sort of a vampire type. But we get the idea of werewolves from vampires, because originally the vampires could be wolves too, or whatever, or shapeshift. They were kind of zombies, ghouls, all of these type monster types we have now all kind of came from that original boogeyman vampire type. Yeah, it's fascinating. Studio Super for super chat there. Thank you so much. Said I would like to see you do movie reactions to older films where folks can vote on and suggest movies. And in your reactions, you insert your scholarly lens and whatnot and doing the analysis. I mean, I can do reviews. I think that's what you mean too. When I hear the word reactions, I think, and I don't think you mean this, but those channels, they're like, watch me watch a video and react to it. That's the stupidest thing in the world. So dumb. How sad and lonely are you that you need to watch a video of somebody else watching a video? It's just but I think you mean reviews, which I definitely do reviews. And yeah, go back to the classics. I used to do the whole we did the film noir reviews, film noir Tuesdays or whatever it was. I don't know. We would do rewatches, and I would give scholarly talks of some of these films. And we did Hitchcock movies, for a while there, I think. So, yeah, maybe do something like that again. It's a good idea. Divinital Kai said, I have the Dracula book and the audiobook on my playlist. I need to sit down and read it. However, I have a big list of books, and Dracula is long. Dracula is a wonderful book. Not as long as some other books, but you mentioned Audible, and there's a great Audible version of it where Tim Curry plays Dr. Van Helsing. It's multiple different, which is good for a novel like Dracula, because it's a novel written in different narratives. There's a term for it, but there's each chapter is like somebody's diary entry or a newspaper clipping or somebody, Dr. Seward recording on a phonograph or whatever. So it's it's told like that. It's told in those clippings and whatnot, and it's a really great way to do it. But because of that, you have these different characters, different voices, and there's a great Audible version. I think Alan Cumming, if I remember, I think Alan Cumming is Dr. Seward, but Tim Curry was Van Helsing. It was good. It was really good. Eldritch Fan said Brian Lumley's Necroscope. Don't know what that is. Thank you for the super chat, though. No idea what that is. Let me look it up. Since you super chatted anyway. Oh, it's a novel series about vampires, apparently. Yeah, never heard of that one. Interesting. Cool covers. Maybe I'll look into that a little bit more. Yeah, that's the thing, when people, and I say I don't like horror, but a lot of what I like, I think other people would classify as horror. Like, I guess technically Dracula's classified as horror. What I really like are monster movies. I like good versus evil struggles, that's the kind of thing I love. So that's why I love Stephen King's It. That's why I love Dracula and Sleepy Hollow and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not really into horror. I actually, I'm going to cut out some of the video of last week's stream because I did some reviews. And if you weren't there, I gave a review on Joe Frankenstein Volume 2, which is great. Recommend people pick that up. I'll cut that out and put it. But I also talked about Floating Dragon by Peter Straub and Summer of Night by Dan Simmons. And I mentioned in that review that I was currently at that time anyway, trying to get through book 2 of that Dan Simmons trilogy. I just had to stop. I couldn't even get through the book. I was almost done too. I was over halfway finished with the book and I just stopped. I'm like, this is so boring. It's so horribly paced and it's got to be so ridiculously cliche. And I just wonder, I liked Summer of Night, but it had a lot of problems. And I mentioned that in my review. But the characterization was good enough to keep me interested in the boys and the basic premise of these boys versus kids versus evil or whatever. That was kind of cool. But it was so many problems with it. And then to read the second Children of Night book, and it was just like, this is so awful. And then all the things I've heard about Hyperion too. I'm like, how is Dan Simmons such a hotshot? I don't really understand why he's, esteems as much as he is. He's just not that great of a writer. But anyway. Studio Super, for the first half of your super chat, said, did you know that Indiana Jones was based off of James Bond? Because Spielberg was rejected from directing a 007 film. They thought his style was too childish, so Indy was his rebound character. I did not know that one aspect of it. I know that Indy is sort of a product of a bunch of different desires. Like Lucas, of course, was wanting to tell a pulp adventure story and had wanted to do, Lucas, before he did Star Wars, he was wanting to do Flash Gordon, so he was into those kind of pulp, it's serialized movies and whatnot, what's the big, oh shoot. I can't remember the big pulp adventure guy. I keep wanting to say Doctor Strange. Obviously, it's not Doctor Strange. He's the Marvel superhero, but can't remember it. But yeah, there's some pulp adventure heroes like that. And I know that's where Lucas was coming from. And maybe I had heard that at some point that Spielberg was coming off a Bondish type character. But yeah, you can definitely see threads of that in there. And again, when you're working from such seminal roots, as those two different areas, it's no wonder that Indiana Jones is such a part of culture, part of integral part of a piece of example of a story that's really stuck in there. So epistolary novel. Thank you, Darthan. Yeah, that's the term for Dracula. Yeah, epistolary novel, where it's written by different epistles. The word epistle means like a letter or a something, a missive, something that's sent. And these aren't necessarily letters that are sent, but there are a lot of journal entries and stuff like that. But yeah, it's fascinating. It's a fascinating novel, Dracula, from a narrative standpoint, just from like the study of narratology, but it's also fascinating from the story itself and so forth. Divinital Kai said, I heard the vampires were revived werewolves. That's why they could transform. Don't know for sure. That's probably an aspect of some storytelling out there or something like that. But yeah, I'm seeing a lot of interest in vampires. I don't know. I'm so interested and ready to go with Sleepy Hollow, but I might have to bring vampires earlier than later or something because people really want to talk about that, which is fine with me. I'm fascinated by that too, and I've done some scholarship, but I need to do a lot more work to get that ready, as ready as, say, the Sleepy Hollow one is. Andre Hernandez says, Sound Engraver and Professor Geek don't like Dan Simmons. That's funny. It's like you two were made for each other. It is. And we didn't really she didn't necessarily color my perception of him. Everything she said about Hyperion, I agree with her. I was like, yeah, that does sound awful, and looked at the stuff she was talking about. I was like, yeah, that's awful. But when I found Summer of Night, I didn't even realize that Dan Simmons was the author. And I thought, and I told her, I said, this is actually, it's by Dan Simmons, but it's pretty good, when I was starting it and stuff. And she said, I've heard some things, maybe his horror is better than his sci-fi or something. And I got through the book. And even though I had a lot of problems, I still, generally liked it. But then in Children of Night, I'm like, wow, I see everything she was talking about in Hyperion. Here it is with Summer of Night. It's just awful, awfully paced. It's just horrible. The second part, Studio Super Chat there says, after Raiders, the guys who rejected him, so he wanted to do something. Oh, after Raiders. Hang on, let me go back and read the part of your last sentence that was cut off on that. So Indy was his rebound character. Okay. After Raiders, the guys who rejected him realized their mistake. In fact, when the third film came about, they couldn't think of anyone better to be his dad than 007 himself, Sean Connery. Yeah, that's, I didn't put that together when you were saying that, but yeah, Sean Connery, the original 007, James Bond being the, that's cool. Cool bit of trivia there. Senator said, Dan Simmons would have been an amazing short story sci-fi horror writer. 2 of his Hyperion tales were A+, the others overindulgent. And that's the frustrating thing too. When you find writers like Stephen King, for example, who are capable of writing really good stuff. And I find more often than not, one of the problems is they've already become such a name. They already become so popular that they get to the point where they can just do what they want. Editors be damned, they're going to do what they want. And that's a problem, and no one should ever get too big for their britches where they feel like they're too good to be edited, or they're too good to be, not censored and not changing their vision, but they're no writer is able to write and understand. You always need that reader's perspective. You always need somebody else's perspective on your work because you're too invested in it. You're too close to it, and you see a lot of writers, they get to their point in their popularity or whatever, and when they can afford, and they're such big of a name that they can just do what they want and not have to, you know bow to this, mandate or whatever by their publisher or something. Andre Hernandez, thank you for the super chat there. Said, what are the requirements for a book to be a work of literature? No happy ending, social commentary? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But that's a good question. What is it, to be a work of literature? And that's kind of there's no real um, canon criteria, or there's no society that says we will determine if this is literary or not. In fact, in some level, every piece of writing is a work of literature, just in the literal meaning of literature, piece of writing, but I think what most of us mean when we say, a work of literature as opposed to just somebody's short story or something is something that ingrains in the culture that kind of stands the test of time. Um, Sometimes there are bad works of literature. There are some bad stories out there, but they've just kind of been ingrained in culture or whatever. They become sort of a work of literature. And then other people can use that word literature as sort of a snobby term, like, well, I like to read literary fiction. I don't read your paltry little science fictions. I read literary fiction, and these types of people are soulless and should be avoided at all costs. But yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. Spidey Rules says, I think the best analogy is that they're teenagers who think they know better than their parents, editors. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. That is a good way of putting it. Like one example was, and this is maybe a silly example, but the Harry Potter books, J.K. Rowling. I read all those books. Haven't seen all the movies yet because I just got tired of the movies after a certain point. I didn't like the way they were going. But I read all the books, and even though I liked them, I definitely saw that the magic was needlessly lost a little bit, just a little bit, right around Goblet of Fire. Not Goblet of Fire. Yeah, it's a Goblet of Fire. Book 4. No, book 3. Right around book 3, still very cool, but it's overly long. Like she just didn't need to go that long. And it was either book 3 or book 4 where I read about how the publishers really couldn't edit her down anymore because she was so popular and the books were so crazy, phenomenal, a phenomenon, at that point where people were just, desperate to grab them up on release dates and stuff like that, that they just couldn't really tell her much anymore because they just wanted her sweet, money that she brought in. So, and you can see that in the books, they get overly long and he's getting older. So of course they're going to be a little bit more complex and a little longer. Sure. But you can tell she's getting away with a lot of stuff at that point that she should have been edited down into. Yeah, it's sad. Studio Super says, have you ever watched Looney Tunes back in action? The thing you criticized them for, ironically enough, they made fun of themselves for those things in that movie. They've learned nothing. No, I didn't even know about Looney Tunes back in action. That's a movie? I love Looney Tunes, classic Looney Tunes and whatnot. And not even, I like the Cartoon Network series they had done some years ago when Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck were like roommates. I thought that was great. That was wonderful. But I haven't heard it back in action. I'm so out of the loop. I know it might seem, you might think, where have you been? Really, the answer is I actively avoid modern or current entertainment news. I just truly do not care about it in any way. Like I couldn't care less that Dave Filoni's got this position now. It doesn't do anything for me. I don't even care. It doesn't even make me mad. I just don't care. It's something I think is boring to talk about. Because like, what is there to talk about? Yeah, okay, so he got that, and he's going to prove he's an idiot. And okay, can we talk about something that matters now? Yeah, like I just hate talking about modern entertainment news. It's gotten to that point where it's just all such garbage, and I hate talking about it. I mean, that's a bad word because it's not like I'm not even viscerally against it. I'm just like totally apathetic to it. It means nothing to me. The modern day entertainment industry, it can all burn in flames. I truly just don't give a crap about it. I really don't. Studio Super says I'm talking about criticizing Warner Brothers. Oh yeah, no, I see what I mean. I see what you're saying there. Yeah, Studio Super. Yeah, the Looney Tunes movie is trying the things we criticize Warner Brothers for. They made fun of themselves for those things in that movie. They've learned nothing. Yeah, I get you what you're saying. Yeah, I hadn't heard about the movie yet though, but yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. All right. Well, believe it or not, also, I'm not going to jump off right now, but let's see what any kind of wrap up the chat a little bit because it's been over an hour. I always feel it. I feel it. Like my social energy battery, just like I feel it deplete a little bit. It's so funny. If you're as introverted as I am, you know what I mean. And you might think, well, you're not mingling at a party. Well, in a way, I am. I mean, I'm alone in this room right now, but um, we're chatting, we're engaging in conversational topics and stuff like that. And for an introvert, your social media battery goes down. And a lot of people think they're introverts, and maybe they've got some aspect of introversion, or maybe they're a little tend towards some introversion. But you don't really know what it's like unless you're a straight up introvert like I am. I mean, it's just I just have a certain amount of energy to talk to people, and that's it. Sound Engraver and I were talking the other day just about the wedding and how much we loved it, and everything was great. And we were talking about the different family that was there that we loved, and we loved her father being there and stuff. But we were reminiscing about the time that I met her father, and her father's very outgoing guy. He's got a lot of interesting things to talk about and stuff, but he does like to talk, and it was also kind of harrowing because I was meeting her father for the first time before I was going to ask for her hand in marriage, and then the thing about me being a Catholic and his, him not, and stuff like that, that was, of concern and all this kind of stuff. And then when we ended up meeting that afternoon, and spent like the entire afternoon into the evening together, and we drove a certain way to meet him like halfway from where he lived. And Sounding Graver's like, she said, I knew on the way back we were in the car and you just needed silence. Let's turn some music on and let's just not talk to each other for a while. Not because I didn't want to talk to my dear Sound Engraver, but just because I just didn't have the energy to put words together and engage in any kind of conversation at that point. It was funny. Spidey Rules says when they're kids, new writers, they rely on their parents, editors, more because they're still learning to a degree. Yeah. Once they reach adolescent success, they do what they can do. Yeah, and the adolescent doesn't realize that they still know nothing and they still need to be taught things. They need to try things on their own, but they still need to be taught quite a bit. But yeah, the adolescent doesn't want to hear that. Yeah, it's a good analogy. Darth Enigma says the Death Eaters chapter in Goblet of Fire was basically Voldemort giving a huge exposition dump. Yeah, I don't remember all the specifics. It's been so long since I read them, but yeah, it was stuff like that. Definitely. Studio Super, thank you for the super chat. Said movie was in early 2000s starring Brandon Fraser. Live action. Oh, that one. Okay, so it wasn't a recent one. It was an older one you're talking about. The live action and animation like Roger Rabbit. Now I do remember that a little bit. The Warner Bros. Are in the movie and fire Daffy for not being popular. They don't make good decisions. Okay, I never saw that, but I do remember that. I remember that being a thing. Yeah, I never saw that one though. Okay. Thanks for clarifying that, because I don't remember these things very well. Ghost Planet own a Plucky Duck plushie. Plucky Duck, that's right, Tiny Toons. I like Tiny Toons. They came a little bit slightly after my time in terms of I was a little older than the average audience for Tiny Toons, because I was more into like Batman the Animated Series, But yeah, I've seen Tiny Toons. I know Plucky Duck. I know them. It was good stuff. Sound Engraver says, same with TikTok musicians. Corporations snap them up before they can develop artistically and creatively. Different from how music producers did it back in the 60s to 70s. Yeah, the music industry is really weird. I don't follow any modern day musical artist, like as in like somebody who's just been, discovered or something recently. I mean, I follow a lot of my favorite older artists and bands who are still putting out stuff. But yeah, it's like, how does the musical industry even work anymore? I mean, everybody's attention span is so 2 seconds that it's like, who would even bother putting out an album? Just put out a track online or a clip of a track on TikTok, and there you go. Yeah, it's interesting. Sad, really, because I mean, I came from the era where you got a band put out an album, and they really worked hard on the album, and there was a cohesiveness to it, And the songs, they were all from a certain era or a time period of that band. It was like a snapshot into that band's history or artist's history, and you really dug into it. And I love that now. I love going through my old, Aerosmith albums or Van Halen albums or Alice Cooper albums, and like, oh, this was that era when this was going on, and you really just experience that again. It was great. But that's just not a thing in music anymore. It's depressing. Of course, my dear Sound Engraver puts out nice albums. She's gonna drop another track, I think, pretty soon. Oh, Sound Engraver's got one track. I won't even say the name because I don't know how much you want to divulge, Sound Engraver. But she had me listen to a clip of it because she was having me listen to this like special filter or some, I don't know her musical terminology, so I apologize. But she was letting me listen to some kind of thing that she was putting on this track, and I just heard the track for the first time. I was like, that's awesome. That is so good. Bass line was so good, and she told me the name, and it like perfectly matches up to the name. I keep telling her, like, when's that going to release? When's that going to release? But apparently she's putting out this other one first, which is good too. But Bebop Bandicoot says, do you think the trends and fashions always come back around? If so, will we ever see the return of the golden age art from the cell of animation through a new art renaissance of sorts? To some degree, things are cyclical, but not like in terms of like going back to the great 2D animation of yore. I don't think we'll ever go back to that because companies don't want to spend the money on it. They've learned how much money they can save with computer animation, and I don't think they'll ever go back. You might have a movie come out or something, or maybe it'll be kind of, chic, to do a little 2D animation here and there. But I don't think we'll ever have a return to the really good quality of stuff we did because it's more time consuming, and companies would rather cut costs than put out good art. I mean, that's the cold hard fact of it. But good question though. Definitely a good topic to talk about. Yeah, Sound Engraver said within a week or two, she's releasing her remastered version of the single Frost that was a previous, which is a good one. But she's remastering it now and going to release that soon. Yeah, Spidey Roll says, speaking of Aerosmith, guess which animated show they made a theme for? Aerosmith did Spider-Man, and it was so good. It was so good. They did some work on the Spider-Man soundtrack too, the Spider-Man the movie soundtrack, which was really good. Luis Sanchez for $4.99, thank you, sir, said the problem is with modern day content or entertainment is that they're not worth your time and don't make it worth your time. And that's why I don't understand. I've said it before, but this people have fallen into this sort of settling for things. Well, it wasn't that bad. Hey, it wasn't that woke. It wasn't that bad. Hey, it wasn't as bad as Last Jedi. Hey, well, it wasn't that. Like, how is that a justification for sitting there and taking your time and letting that story be poured into your heart and mind? How is that a justification that it wasn't that bad? I mean, if you try something out and you're thinking it's going to be good and it ends up not being great, but wasn't that bad, that's fine. But people, that's just like been their default. Like if it's good enough to go spend some time and money on, if it's not that bad, and that's sad. That is really sad. Sorry, Bandicoot. Bebop Bandicoot. Well, that just sounds very black pill depressing. Yeah, I don't. I mean, well, here's the upside of that, though. Even though I stand by what I said, I don't think the industry's going to return to it in any way. I think that you will have creators, artists and creators and filmmakers who rediscover it and will end up putting out some good stuff. I'll give you one example. Oh man, he's going to kill me. I can't think of his name right now. Let me see if I can find the name. Rob Pratt. Okay, that was his name. Rob Pratt. He has a really cool YouTube channel. He's a Disney animator. He does even 3D animated shows at Disney or whatever. I actually had him on my channel. You can go back and look for like Professor Geek Rob Pratt or whatever. You'll see the interview I did with him because I was doing a series on 2D great Superman animations from the past. And Rob Pratt, who even though he does great 3D animations or whatever, he's very skilled at it for different things or whatever, but he has a series of animation shorts on his channel which are all 2D, like really just him hand drawn the cells and stuff like that. And he's done I think 2 classic Superman 2D animation shorts, which are so wonderful. He even got the guy who did the voice for Superboy to come do the voice for Superman. And then he's done a really cool Flash Gordon one. think he was going to do an Indiana Jones one, maybe, but he started his own series called Carman, which is 2D animated too. And he does these things for fun. So I think, these are just little YouTube shorts, but I do think you could end up, when it comes to, cycles around a little bit, it'd be really great to have some bigger, some creators who've got the funding to put out like a whole feature length film of it. I think we could possibly get that, and hopefully it'll be great. Even though I don't think the whole industry is going to return to it, Studio Super says Luis Sanchez makes it sound like with modern dating, yeah, instead of wining and dining, they just show up and say, "I'm here, praise me." That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. Yep. All right, guys. Well, I'm over my time, so I'm gonna call it a night here. But it's been fun chatting with you guys. Like I said, I didn't really have much of a topic other than just announcing those podcasts, and I'll give you more details about those over the next month. But it's been fun chatting all the top topics and comments and things you guys brought up. So a lot of fun. We'll definitely maybe we'll do some more live streams like this too, which are a little bit more discussion centric. But I need to go veg and get some food. I haven't really had dinner, so I'm gonna go do that and hang out with my dear wife, Sound Engraver. And yeah, hope you guys have a good one. Hope you're, it's still Thanksgiving weekend, so still relax, still enjoy as much as you can. If you're like me and you're going back to work this week, because it's so hard as a college professor. I was telling the Sound Engraver, you got to go back and make yourself care about teaching for like 2 more weeks before you're off for winter break, for Christmas break. So anyway, hope you guys get some good relaxation in, and I'll be doing the same. Until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the true blue hero stories you love. Thanks for watching.